Today on CityCast Madison. Do you want to know a secret? Madison has the first ever electric fire truck in use in the nation. We're helping lead the way on climate change by ditching our gas guzzlers for electric vehicles, including on some of the worst offenders. So, of course, we had to scope it out. It's Tuesday, November 29th. I'm Bianca Martin, and this is CityCast Madison. I'm here at the Station 8 Firehouse over by Easttown Mall with producer Dylan Brogan. Let's head in and see this marvel. Madison firefighters Dan Belovarac and Josh Balli are showing us around. It looks like every other fire truck, big, shiny, and red, but inside there's a huge battery instead of a diesel engine. Here's Dan.
We let it go through the initiation startup process. And then we hit our start switch, hold it for a moment, and we hear it fire up. Rig is running and everything's in normal mode.
Let's meet Assistant Fire Chief Scott Bavery to see how this all came about. How did Madison become the first city with the first ever electric fire truck in use in the country?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bianca, and we're pretty blessed that we have a partnership with Pierce and have had one for such a long time. Pierce is up in Appleton, which is obviously not too far from Madison. So we've had Pierce vehicles throughout our agencies for as long as I can remember, for a long time, especially now all of our fire engines and ladder trucks are manufactured here in Wisconsin and proudly at Pierce. So it was years ago, Chief Davis at the time, who is now retired, actually went up to Pierce and talked to their VP, and I think he even got a meeting with the president and basically told them, like, hey, at some point, we're not the only fire department, but at some point, I hope you're looking at electrification for fire engines. I know when I got in the fire service, and I've been following electric vehicles, I think it's pretty impressive. I never thought that we'd see an electric fire engine in my career. I really didn't. I thought maybe an ambulance, definitely some of the support vehicles, chief's cars, pickup trucks, some of those things. Little did we know at the time, Pierce was actually working on one already. It was obviously a big secretive thing with the technology and a competitive process there for an organization, right, for a company to produce this truck. So eventually they did come to Madison and say, hey, we are working on this fire truck concept. Would you be willing to be a part of it? This firehouse was picked for many reasons, but one of the reasons is the crew that was here. That was really a big part of it.
Are you talking about where we are right now at Station 8?
Yep. The chief really, right, we had our choice where this rig could go. We wanted it to be a busy firehouse, which Station 8 meets that criteria. It goes on fire calls and EMS calls, and it's kind of an all-hazard type of area here. They see a lot of variety of calls. So it really fit the model of what Pierce was looking for to really test it.
What do you think the benefit is to having this non-diesel engine fire truck? Like, how is that going to benefit the department and the city?
I get that question a lot, and these fellows can chime in too if they have input, but it's really not a cost saving at this point. So there was a significant savings in diesel fuel. After one year use of the fire truck, we saved approximately $13,000 in diesel fuel. We also experienced some savings in maintenance cost. But the flip side of that, we saw some increases in energy costs, right, from our bills that we're paying Madison Gas and Electric. There's a push there, and it's not just cost, right? It's more about what it's doing to the environment. And that's the biggest benefit, to your question earlier, is why we think it's important. Based on a year's run total, the data came up that we would save 60,000 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere, right? So that's the why.
Can you talk about a little bit like what it means to repair this truck versus your traditional diesel trucks, or the maintenance? Like, what's different there?
A lot of the stuff that we've seen on this truck, it's not the typical like components of a diesel engine in there, right? So, however, there's a lot of times that they would take the truck out of service for technical updates, right? There's a lot more electronics in this, and some of those they could do remotely. Sometimes it wouldn't need to go out of service. Sometimes it would. Our fleet mechanics weren't allowed to get into this truck very much, right? Again, the fleet Pierce would send down technicians to do most of the work, or we'd send the truck back up with them to do that work because of the I guess, the secretiveness or the importance of keeping that technology kind of bundled in because they were doing this competitive process, right? And it was just a demo truck.
It has a system on board where a couple of times we just pulled it out onto the ramp here in Madison, but their technicians up in Appleton were diagnosing and looking at the computer and seeing what was wrong.
By the way, that's firefighter Dan Belovarac.
Some of the things they had to work on was the transmission. We had some transmission shifting issues when we first got it. And the way they fixed it was the engineers that worked on the transmission came down, plugged a computer or a laptop into the rig, and we just drove around with them trying to mimic what it was doing. And as we did so, they could see on the laptop, and they would adjust the transmission as we were driving.
The men and women that kind of fought through the process of dealing with this, because it caused more work for these individuals. But it's really cool work because most fire departments never ever have an opportunity to get involved in something like groundbreaking as this, to like basically demo something that's this much of an improvement for the fire service is unheard of. But what was really important with having this test model truck be done here in Wisconsin, a few reasons, but Pierce really wanted to put this through the ringer with the different climates, right? So to get that real hot weather created some issues, right? And then that real cold weather created some issues. So what a great place to do it here in Madison and experience those 4 different seasons.
Has anything surprised you so far in driving the truck, or any of the components, or just generally in terms of teamwork and any collaboration?
I mean, that's easy for me, just doing my first podcast on it.
I knew it was a big thing, right, in the fire service. I'm probably the one that's taken all the calls, right? I am the one that's taken all the calls from fire chiefs or fleet managers or even politicians from definitely all over the country. But we've had people come visit here from Canada. We'd have had people, I think one department came from Europe. Mm-hmm. The fire service is a big animal. And when we can step back and kind of look at it from the bird's eye view of the impact that this can have on departments all over the country and even the world, again, it is pretty impressive. It's pretty humbling to actually be a part of it.
This is the first one. Is there a plan to try and grow the fleet to have more electric, or maybe even have an entirely electric fleet?
Yeah, it's a great question. The technology is not there on the ladder trucks yet. The bigger trucks, I guarantee it. These companies are working on it. I personally am focused on electrification of our fleet as much as we can. Now, with that said, we also have to be mindful, right, of the cost. But it doesn't just end with fire trucks in our organization, right? We've been buying electric lawnmowers, right? We're looking at electric chainsaws. We got electric hydraulic tools now, and there's our chief cars are all hybrid. So we're looking at electrification of other things too as well. We're starting to see, the city has buses now that are electric. We saw there's a dump truck, a cement mixer that's running on electric, to move that much weight around, right? And Dan mentioned a little bit, even these trucks for us, it's not just moving it around, but it's also, this is a life-saving piece of equipment, and significant consequences happen if something happens to this truck en route to someone. And that was one of the really worrisome part that we had, hence the diesel engine backup. It's not a hybrid because it doesn't charge a battery, but just to make sure that was in place. So there's a lot goes to it because it's different compared to maybe a cement truck going down the road.
But you just brought up something that really struck me when we were talking about the health aspect for the men and women who are working in the fire department, that this electric truck, that it really minimizes, that there's not the diesel fumes, and that impacts the health of the firefighters. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's definitely a push. The men and women that are in the fire service are at high risk for a lot of things health-wise. As far as obviously people think of cancer, people think of heart attacks, people think of getting, falling through a floor at a fire. Anything that we can do to reduce some of the issues, right? It's a quieter rig, so we don't have as problems. Even things like as we get older and been on the job a long time, our hearing, obviously the fumes that you mentioned. So that's a constant thing in the fire service, and hopefully we continue to improve those type of things and can continue to eventually lower those numbers down.
We used to have Wednesday, I think it was wall washing day. We used to have to wash the walls in the stalls because of the old diesels that weren't really filtered. I mean, they would just be covered with soot, and at many stations we would have the doors blocked open. So we were just letting all that into the stations.
Well, here to innovation. So I'm a mustache fan in every sense, and I'm excited to see there are 2 mustaches at the table.
Whose is better, though?
I absolutely will not answer that because I am a mustache fan across the board. Something that you commonly see in fire departments are men with mustaches, and I laud that. And I also have heard that there's potentially a history behind it and that there might be a functionality, and that might be a myth, but I am extremely curious if it's true and if it's more, is it just a culture thing or is there some function to having a mustache as a firefighter?
I can't answer. I don't have one.
Chief's out.
I would say some's urban legend, some's myth. I mean, yes, there are the stories about like soak them in water with a rag and use them for a filter, where some would actually put Vaseline on them and be able to go through. But if you think Vaseline, petroleum jelly is flammable with it, I mean, I've had some individuals ask kind of like why we have smaller, goofy ones. Well, for the most part, they have to be shaved to a certain point where our air mask will fit over them and have an airtight seal. Some of the large, traditional, big, bushy, heavy mustaches with the curled up handlebars on them, those are nice. And I think some of them is just a tradition to try to grow them.
Bell's a big mustache fan, too. You kind of have to earn your mustache. That's the way it used to be anyways.
How do you earn your
mustache?
Yeah,
Just being on the job. Doing work, putting your time in.
This is so exciting for our city and such a point of pride, and you all already are a point of pride for us, so thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
The Madison Fire Department's electric truck has been on more than 1,000 calls so far this year. So the next time you hear the siren, know the Madison Fire Department is fighting not just fires, but climate change too. And here's what else Madison is paying attention to. After 3 years, you better believe it, roller derby is back. Can you feel the thunder? Ah! Their first doubleheader bout will happen on Saturday, December 10th at the Kiva Sports Center in Middleton. Doors are at 5 p.m. Maybe see you there. And this week, Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway is on the move. She's taking 20 city officials to the town of Canifing in the Gambia. Canifing is one of Madison's 9 sister cities, and the trip's aim is to deepen and continue our mutual exchange of ideas. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. We're produced by Molly Stentz and Dylan Brogan. Music is by Carl Christensen. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell the firefighters over on Willie Street about us? I know, it's not lawn chair season anymore, but they're still there. You can also get more news delivered right to your inbox from our friends over at Madison Minutes. There's a link in our show notes. We'll be back Thursday morning with more news from around the city. Until then, wake it up, wake it up, wake it up. Boom.